So I'm going to start to set up my sketches, and so I've gone to the front view canvas, and I'll start a new sketch on the XY plane, and then I'm going to sketch a rectangle, and I'm trying to decide how I want to do this. Let's just put a rectangle out here in space someplace. And then I'm going to put the midpoint of this rectangle at the origin. So I'll do midpoint, I'll select this horizontal line, I'll select the origin, and I'm going to then sketch a line from the origin up to the midpoint of the top horizontal line. I'll right click on this vertical line, and I'm going to change that to a center line. And then I'm going to dimension the distance from one edge over to the center line, and be sure you pick the center line, not the end point of the center line. I'll pick the center line, and when I do that, I'm given a diametral dimension. I'm going to start out with a stock diameter of 8 inches. And actually, let's make this a little bit smaller, so I'll double click on that. Let's make this 4 inches. Okay, so here is my part, and then my stock size diameter of 4 inches. I'm going to put the height in here then, 3.68 inches. And so a dimension from here to here. And let me get a dimension tool up to here, 3.68 inches. And I like to put the dimensions in my sketch more or less in the same location that they were in the reference, the canvas reference that we're using. And that way I can keep track of this and make sure that I get all of my dimensions. So this one, this stock size is what we machine our part from. Now usually we just model this in its finished shape, but for this particular model it may be best to model it step by step from a stock piece of stock till we get all of the dimensions. So I'm going to finish that sketch, and let's turn off the canvas for a minute, and then I'm going to do revolve, and I'll select this area right here, and for the axis I'll select this center line, and I'll go ahead and revolve that. So that's our piece of stock that we're going to cut our part out of. I'm then going to go back and edit sketch number 1, and so I'll come down, I'll say edit sketch, and I'm going to add some more sketch elements in. So let me turn the canvas back on, and I'm going to draw this line and this arc. So I'll draw a line from about right here down to here. Now if you click and hold the mouse button down, you can sketch out an arc. If you have trouble doing that, just draw 2 lines and use the fillet command. And I'll let go of the arc there, and I'm going to come down here and click down here. Now the distance from here to here was on one of our other canvases. Now I'll dimension the distance from this point over to the center line. Now on the drawing I'm given that as a radius, and so I'm going to put in the dimension 0.669 times 2, so that I have it dimensioned as the diameter. And then I'm going to dimension the angle from here to here, and for now I'll put it in as 50 degrees, 57 degrees. We may change that here in a minute. We need to check and verify what that dimension is, and then we can go back and edit it. I'm then going to dimension this distance, and I'll do that as 2 inches, that radius, and I'll dimension this distance from here over to the center line, and I'll do that, and we'll check that dimension and edit it to whatever it's supposed to be. So let's turn on that canvas again, and I see that this dimension is supposed to be 2.76, and so I'll be turning the canvas on and off. Now I could make this canvas transparent so I can see through it. It'll be easier to see in the recording if I don't. And I've already forgot what it was. I think it was 3.36. I'm then going to go back and edit sketch number 1, and so I'll come down, I'll say edit sketch, and I'm going to add some more sketch elements in. So let me turn the canvas back on, and I'm going to draw this line and this arc. So I'll draw a line from about right here down to here. Now if you click and hold the mouse button down, you can sketch out an arc. If you have trouble doing that, just draw 2 lines and use the fillet command. And I'll let go of the arc there, and I'm going to come down here and click down here. Now the distance from here to here was on one of our other canvases, probably the side view canvas. Let's look around at that and see what that is. Now I'll dimension the distance from this point over to the center line. Now on the drawing I'm given that as a radius, and so I'm going to put in the dimension 0.669 times 2 so that I have it dimensioned as the diameter. And then I'm going to dimension the angle from here to here, and for now I'll put it in as 50 degrees, 57 degrees. We may change that here in a minute. We need to check and verify what that dimension is, and then we can go back and edit it. I'm then going to dimension this distance, and I'll do that as 2 inches, that radius, and I'll dimension this distance from here over to the center line, and I'll do that, and we'll check that dimension and edit it to whatever it's supposed to be. So let's turn on that canvas again, and I see that this dimension is supposed to be 2.76, and so I'll be turning the canvas on and off. Now I could make this canvas transparent so I can see through it. It'll be easier to see in the recording if I don't. And I've already forgot what it was. I think it was 3.36. 3.36. I'll double click on that, 3.36. And so we can always change these dimensions after the fact. I need to check on this angle dimension and see what it was. Alright, I'll turn off the graphics. Now I'm kind of curious about where this dimension came from. Several different things we need to think about here. The part might be a combination of inch units and metric units. Actually, let's measure, and to measure that first I'm going to mirror that to the other side. So I'll mirror this line, this arc, and this line. Now make sure this tangent is on this both ends of this arc, tangent to these lines. I'll mirror that about the center line, and I'll say OK to that, and then I'm going to measure this distance from here to here. And so I'll go to the inspection tab, make sure I'm showing my secondary units, and I'll click from here to here, and I see that that is a distance of 33.985. So maybe that dimension came from a metric unit, so I'm going to round that off to 44 millimeters. So let me go ahead and close this. I'll double click on this dimension, and I'm going to type in 44 mm, and Fusion will automatically convert that to inches for me. And actually, let's do that as, I meant to do that as 34 millimeters. So let's put that back in here. And so then keep in mind that when we machine this, let me turn on the, that point that we just dimensioned is where this arc will come down and meet this line. So that point is going to be machined away, and we may create a operation sheet where that is a starting dimension, because after we machine that and put that fillet in there, we can no longer measure that dimension out on the shop floor or in inspection. So we need to keep those kind of things in mind as we are putting in our sketch dimensions. Alright, now I'm going to do a little bit of extra work here in order to get this all to work out. I'm going to draw a line from about right here, and I really would probably like for where that fillet arc is, but I'm just going to put it in to about right here to somewhere over here on this line. And then I'm going to put a couple of dimensions on here. I'll go ahead and dimension it, and I'm going to dimension from here to here as 50 degrees. And I'll dimension from this point down to here, and I'll dimension that as 1.605. Now, right now, where I got those dimensions from is from a trial and error, which I will explain as we go on. Right now, there isn't a logical explanation of where I've got those. Although this point right here, I might want that to be where that fillet was going to come across here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch, and I'm going to edit this revolve. So I'll edit feature, and I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to unselect this area right in here. And so this is our first cut on our cylindrical stock. I'm going to make this canvas a little more transparent so I can see my sketch more easily through the canvas. So I'm going to edit that canvas, and actually I had it up to 100%. I'll drag it down about halfway, and then I'm going to edit this sketch again. And so I'll do edit sketch. I think I hit the wrong thing. I did redefine. I'll do edit sketch, and I'm going to then do the inside sketch lines here. And I'm going to start this out with a horizontal line. I'll just put it out here in space initially, and then I want the midpoint of this line. I accidentally created an extra line. I want the midpoint of this line to be over here on this center line. So I'll do a midpoint constraint over onto this line. Now I want it to be able to move up and down. I accidentally put it on the midpoint of that line. So let's do this a little differently. I'm going to do this horizontal line, and I'll do coincident, and I'll select the center line, and then I'll hold down the shift key, and I'll get the midpoint of that line. Now I should be able to move this line up and down. I'll put it about right here, and I'll put it in the exact location here in a minute. And then I'm going to draw a line from here and down to about here, and I'll click and drag to do that arc down to about here, and then I'll come down to about here, and I'll click and drag to put over to the end of this line. I might not have gotten that. Let me do that again, and there, like that. Then I will dimension these. So I'm going to dimension from this line to the center line, and I'll do that as at 2.76. Now it puts a diameter symbol in there, and this actually isn't a diameter, but it will make it easier for me to follow if I do that. And then I'll do this as 1 inch, and I'll put in the diameter or the radius of this arc as 0.5, and I'll do the angle between here and here as 134, and then I'll do the dimension from the bottom up to this line as the 1.085. So you see how I put the dimensions close to where they were on the original canvas to keep track of them. I'm going to turn off the visibility of the canvas here for a minute, and I see that I still have some blue entities here, and I only have one tangent constraint here, so I'm missing a tangent over on that side. So I'll put a tangent between here and here, and I'll also do a tangent between here and here, and then I'll test that out to try to determine why it isn't fully constrained. So if I drag this, turn the canvas back on, and I see that I'm missing this dimension 0.522. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the full length or the half length. I'm going to do it as 1.044. And so let's dimension this, and I'll dimension from here to here as 1.044. And I'll turn my canvas back on, make sure that I've got it, and I went too far with that. I'm trying to figure out why it's so much wider here than it is down here. That distance might have been from the intersection between here and here over to the intersection over here. So we'll need to take care of that. So let's turn off the sketch for a minute. So this dimension is to an implied location, the intersection here and over here. Alright, so comparing that to the canvas, this distance is too great. So actually, if I turn off the sketch, the canvas dimension is to that implied intersection where this line and this line would intersect right here over to here. And so let's put a point there to locate those. Now we could dimension that to an intersection, but that might be a little bit more difficult to show to a beginner. And so instead I'm going to put a point there. So I'll create a point, and I'll put this in space about right there, and I'll do coincident this point to that line, this point to this line. So that gives us that implied location where this line would intersect this line before the fillet was put on there. I'm going to mirror this to the other side, so I'm going to do mirror. I'll select this line, this arc, this line, this arc, and this point, and it automatically picks up the center line, so I don't need to tell it the mirror line. I'll say OK to that, and then I'll dimension this 1.44, or delete that dimension and put it in from these implied intersection points. So 1.44, and now if I compare this to the original canvas, I still have that distance. It should be 1.044, and so I'll double click 1.044. And so if I compare this, keep comparing it to the original canvas, I'm less likely to follow through, and I made a mistake, but I've corrected the mistake right away. So I see a lot of users that will create a complex sketch and then try to fix everything. Fully define the sketch as you go along, and you're less likely to run into an issue that's complicated to fix. Now in reality, I would not have mirrored these because you end up with all these mirror constraints. There is a more efficient way of doing this, but for the purpose of this video, I think I need to keep it simple. And so I'm going to finish that sketch, and I'll turn on the visibility of the body, and then I'm going to do an extrude, and I'm going to select this area in here, and I'm going to select this area in here. I'm going to tell it that I want to go through all. Maybe if I bring this around at an angle, it'll be easier to see. So I'm going to tell it to do symmetric. The distance is through all, and right now it defaults to cut. I don't want to cut. I want to find the intersection between that cylindrical object and the geometry that we want to keep. So I'll do intersection, and I'll say OK to that. And so we see what we have so far. We'll save that, and we'll go on to the next step. I like to keep my sketches consecutive if I can. It's not always possible, but I'm going to drag the playhead back to just after sketch 1, and then I'm going to turn on the side view canvas, and let's go over here to the side view, and I'm going to sketch this side view on whatever the appropriate plane is there. So I'm going to go to the right side view. I'll turn off sketch number 1, and I will start a new sketch. I will select the YZ plane, and it rotates it around. I'm going to put it back where I had it, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle. Now I'm going to put it out here in space initially, about like that, and I'll dimension this distance 2.606. So I'll dimension that 2.606. And then I'm going to dimension. Now the distance from here to here is one of the other views, so I need to go and find what that dimension was. If I turn on the bottom view, and I'll rotate around and look at that, and I see that that dimension was 1.478. So let's go ahead and dimension that. 1.478. And again, this dimension is before the fillets are put on there, and so that's an imaginary position that we can't measure directly on the finished model. We can only measure it as we're in the machining process, as we're going along. I'm going to do a midpoint constraint between this line and the origin, and so I need to find that origin. And let me turn off that bottom view, and I'll change this line to construction. So I'll select that line and I'll hit X on the keyboard, or you can right click and you can toggle between a normal and construction line. I'll then draw a line at an angle from here to about here. I'll click and drag this arc, and so let me click and drag that arc. Now you have to be careful when you're using that technique that you don't create some extra geometry. Then I'll create a line down to here. I need to add the tangent on this side, so I'll do tangent between here and here, and then I need to put in the 5 degrees, and so I'll do the angle between here and here and put in that 5 degrees, and then I'll put in the radius, and that is 0.708. And I see that it isn't fully constrained, and if I try to drag it, I see that this center point of that arc isn't remaining on the center line. So I could either do this mirror between here and here, or I could do coincident between here and the center line. Now for some reason it's giving me an error where it's failing to solve that. I'm not sure why it's giving me that error. Sometimes you can drag and drop it. Let's try just doing the mirror. So I'll do a mirror, or I need to do a mirror constraint, not a mirror of the object. So I'll do symmetry between this line and the center line. And again, it doesn't seem to work for me, so I need to turn off that canvas and see if I can figure out what's going on here. So I might have accidentally put an extra line in here, and I don't see anything wrong over there. I don't see anything wrong over here. Oh, I see what it is. I don't have a center line here, so I didn't project that from the earlier sketch. Let's just put a line in here from here up to here, and then I'll put a vertical constraint on that. So I'll put a vertical constraint on here, and we see that it's all fully defined. Now I'm going to change that to a construction line type. So I'll select it and click X. And so solve your problems as you go along. Don't wait till the end and try to solve them at the end. I'm then going to draw a circle here, and let's see what the diameter was. So I'll turn on that canvas, and that diameter was 6.44 or 0.644. And then I'll turn off the canvas here for a minute. Let's make that circle, it looks like I got it coincident to or concentric with this arc. If I needed to add that, I would add that concentricity. Alright, let's finish the sketch. I'll turn the body back on, and so I'll drag my playhead back to the end, and then I'm going to do extrude, and I'll select this area. I'll tell it that I want to go both directions or symmetric, and maybe if I put this at an angle it will be easier to see what we're doing. I want to distance I want to go through all, and I wanted to do the intersection between the existing geometry and what we want to keep. So that's actually something that very few people know about or use, is this intersection command. They use join and they use cut, but they seldom use intersect. And so here we have our geometry, and we see now that we've made a lot of progress on getting this part to match the drawing. So now if we go back to the original front canvas, we can see that this arc in our geometry closely matches the canvas. Again, remember the canvas is reference. We more or less eyeballed when we did the calibration. If you want to adjust those dimensions on sketch 1, so I'll right click on sketch 1 and I'll do show dimensions. So you could edit this dimension and this dimension to get that arc to show up closer if you wanted to take the time to do that. It does show up pretty close to where that point was in the original drawing. So I think we're well within the manufacturing tolerance on getting that. And then if I look over here on this side and go to the side view, then again we see that this arc on the geometry fairly closely matches the arc on the original canvas. If we made some adjustments on that, we could maybe get that closer if we wanted to as well. And then the next step would be to turn on the bottom canvas and go ahead and cut out the hex on the bottom. And let's go ahead and do that. And also we can see that arc on the canvas. Now we could adjust that a little bit, and that's what I was saying earlier. I might come down with that angled line that we put in, put it at the radius of that fillet. We haven't put that fillet in yet, but that might get us closer to matching the original geometry. I want to do one thing. I want to put that helix in there because a lot of people miss a step on that. I mean the hexagon. So there's a lot of people miss a step on that hexagon. So I'm going to go ahead and do the hexagon. So I'll create a polygon. And it doesn't really matter whether I do inscribed or circumscribed. I'm going to click here and I'll come out at some distance. And then it's really important to put a horizontal or vertical, in this case a horizontal constraint on one of these sides of the hex. And then the dimension, I'm upside down here, so I need to rotate around to see what that is. And let me find that dimension. Hold on one second. Okay, so it says 1.09. I don't really like the way they dimensioned it, but I'll go ahead and dimension this from here to here as the 1.09. And I didn't get it in correctly. Let's do that again. For some reason on my computer, the numlock was off. 1.09. There we go. All right, so now we see that that matches it. Now, in the model, there was a fillet in these corners. I would make sure that's actually going to fit the whatever fastener is going to go in here. I assume that that's what that hex is for. And then we'll extrude that. I think the distance was 0.2. And so let me go ahead and do that extrusion. Let me turn off that sketch 1. Okay, so I'll do that extrusion. I'll select that. And I don't know if I got it there. And I'll go to whatever it was, 0.2. And then we can put the hole in here. Now I'm going to start a new sketch on the XZ plane first. I'll do a new sketch, and the only thing I'm going to do is put a point on that sketch, and I'll finish sketch. And I prefer to do it this way, and then I'll do a hole, and I'll select that point, and I'm going to do a threaded hole, and I need to do the specification as an M12. So I'll come down here, and that's kind of confusing that there's all this wasted space here, and you might not even see this down here. And I'll say anti-metric 12 by 1.75, and the distance I want to go is through all. So I'll select that and tell it to go all the way through the part, and then I'll put the chamfer on here. Now I like to put a chamfer on this end too, just to break the sharp edges. So I'll go ahead and do a chamfer on this end, let's say 0.0625, and I'm going to put some chamfers along those edges. So I'll do a chamfer along this edge. Now the model shows slightly different chamfer in here. That would have to be modeled if you wanted that difference. And let's do that as, let's say, 0.015, and maybe a little bit bigger than that. Let's say 0.03. And I'll say OK to that. And we could do the outside one at the same time. I'm going to do a chamfer here and here. And I'll do that also as 0.015. I forgot what I did now. I did 0.03, I think. And then there's a chamfer down on the bottom side. Let's look at that. So let's rotate this part back around. Chamfer on this threaded hole. And so let's look at that. Did I ever put the fillet on here too? I don't think I ever put the fillet. And I see something that, okay, so let's do that fillet. I forget what it was. I'll do 0.015. We can always increase it. Let's do 0.03. Check the drawing. Make sure you match the drawing or whatever it's supposed to be. And then let's turn on that. I need to see what that bottom, and there was a chamfer on the bottom here in that hole, and I don't see it here. It must have been on one of the other views. Let me check the other views and see if I can find it. Okay, so I found it. Let me turn this off, and I'll do a chamfer. Now you can just select the edge and right click to get to that fillet or chamfer. And it was an angle, so I'll do distance and angle, and 0.125 for the distance, and the angle 15 degrees. And we'll say OK to that. All right, so we could do some additional work to as needed to get it to match, but I think that the critical difficult part were these two sides, and this side and the corresponding side on the other side of the part. And I would probably make a configuration of the starting stock and the first two steps of the first two cuts, or maybe a configuration at each individual cut for an operation sheet.